Prior to The Last Knight, the Transformers movie franchise was an unstoppable juggernaut. Pretty much every installment made more than the last internationally. The first one made $709 million internationally, the second $836, the third crossed $1 billion, and the fourth one did as well. However, with The Last Knight, things took a drastic turn for the worse. Transformers The Last Knight made only $605 million internationally. To put things in perspective, this is about $100 million less than what the first one made, which makes absolutely no sense in terms of how well the film franchise was doing. Imagine if the latest Fast and Furious made less than the first. That's another franchise that is extremely lucrative and continues to be lucrative, unlike Transformers. As a matter of fact, Hasbro was so incredibly disappointed with The Last Knight that they have pretty much completely cut ties with Michael Bay and plan to reboot Transformers down the line. The only thing left from the Bayverse is the upcoming Bumblebee film, and with it rests the future of the Bayverse. If it does well, they may make another. If it doesn't, they will probably scrap everything so far. They may even be planning to do a soft reboot by the tone of the latest trailer. It seems to be that they will focus more on the dramatic elements of having a giant transforming car as a best friend, as opposed to the action. The CEO of Hasbro stated that they are excited about Bumblebee, and they will work with Paramount to, quote, reset the future direction of Transformers, unquote. So while that isn't him confirming that a reboot is in order, it sure does sound like it. But that's a topic for another video. Let's return to The Last Knight. Why did it do so poorly? If you don't want to look too deep, critics will just blame the overall low box office of that particular summer, or claim it's just so brain dead people didn't want to see it, or even say it was a sudden onset of franchise fatigue. People just don't want to see Optimus Prime and pals anymore. And all of these could have influenced the result, there's no doubt about that. But to truly see how this film franchise went from grossing over $1 billion on installment to barely over half that, we need to look at the film itself and why people go to see these Transformers films. To put it simply, audiences went to see these films to see these Transformers in action. Whether that be transforming, punching each other, or simply shooting at each other and causing copious amounts of damage, audiences would be happy and go and see it a second or third time. As to get to that sweet $1 billion mark, you most definitely need repeat viewings from your audiences. I personally saw Revenge of the Fallen 5 times in theaters with my brother. Things were going well up until Age of Extinction. Passing $1 billion in international box office is no small feat. But if you look closely, you can tell it was already in an, albeit extremely small, state of decline. While the third one made about $1,123 million, the fourth one made $1,104 million. So we're already losing some money on a franchise that had seen no other direction but up. So before we even get to analyzing how things went so completely off the rails with the fifth Transformers film, you need to take into account the decisions that were made on the fourth one. You can criticize Shia LaBeouf all you want, but the man did successfully carry 3 huge blockbusters. Sure, he may not be the most versatile of actors, but for some reason he paired really well with towering robots. You believe the connection that he had with Optimus, and you believe the connection he had with Bumblebee, and those 3 were essentially the emotional core of the series so far. Losing Megan Fox was a pretty bad hit for the franchise, but she did bring it upon herself with her comments about Michael Bay. However, her replacement, Rosie Huntington, did well with the material she was given. But in the fourth installment, you have a brand new cast of human characters that pretty much all but ignores the humans from the series so far. You have Marky Mark, his underage daughter, her crazy stunt-loving boyfriend, and the comedic relief. And they all did not work at either connecting with the robots or connecting with the audience. Despite this, there was an extraordinary amount of scenes dedicated to these people bonding with each other. Even an entire sequence was dedicated to explaining why an older man dating the underage daughter was totally fine, and it was cringe-inducing. But okay, let's ignore these horrible humans for a bit and instead focus on the Transformers themselves. Well, guess what? The only 2 you will recognize are Optimus and Bumblebee, because who doesn't want to see their other favorite Transformer characters horrifically and brutally murdered? And that is sadly what happens. So instead of the established and beloved Autobots, we get a whole new gang of woefully unlikable idiot bots that seem more at home with the Decepticons. You got Goodman Bot, who I think gets more screen time than Optimus. You got Samurai Bot, who's there to spout words of wisdom, and Dumb Bot. They all bicker with each other and bicker with Optimus, and you never sympathize with any of them. So far, we got a really bad cast of humans, a bad cast of robots, and to make things even worse, the film is incredibly bloated as Michael Bay essentially saved all his cool action scenes for the very end of the film when they arrived to China, because studios love pandering to the mighty Chinese box office. I enjoyed the design of the Dinobots, but they arrived to save the day for all of about 8 minutes. The final battle is spread out to a point where things are so disjointed, you lose track of what's going on. To make things even worse, Optimus doesn't take care of business like he did in Revenge of the Fallen or Dark of the Moon. He just gets himself impaled with his own sword and needs the help of the humans to be able to defeat Lockdown. Oh, and how about the transformations? Well, you can kiss those goodbye, since the enemies transform via particle effects instead of an actual mechanical visual effect. Alright, I veered pretty deeply into criticizing the fourth, but it's pretty important to mention as the errors that were made in that one were doubled down with the fifth one. I really hope you enjoyed Mark Wahlberg as the so-called inventor Cade Yeager, because his screen time pretty much doubles in the fifth installment. So more extremely mediocre acting in the lead role with a guy who has no real connection to the robots. And if you thought the fourth one was bloated, get ready to test your bladder with the fifth film. But what about the amazing Bay action? Well, in this film, he didn't even deliver on that. It was lazy and uninspired. It felt more like Michael Bay wanted to do certain sequences and then wrote them into the film instead of trying to better his incredible robot fighting sequences from before. He wanted to shoot a polo match, so he did. He wanted to shoot a fast-paced driving sequence in London, so he did. He wanted to shoot a cool military operation storming an unknown location with jets, so he did. Note how none of these sequences have anything to do with the robots. It's like he was going out of his way to not include a single memorable sequence with them. Even the incredible three-headed dragon that showed up on the promotional materials is briefly seen for maybe 20 seconds in the movie. Grimlock comes out for about 1 minute in total, I believe, and the action is so little in space so far apart, it's incredibly forgettable. But boy oh boy do we get to see Cogman. Yes, the sociopathic C-3PO ripoff is pretty much the star robot in this film. To make things even worse, Optimus is essentially put out of commission for a huge part of the film. He's put under mind control almost immediately, and is then locked away until the end of the movie where he unceremoniously battles Bumblebee. I'll admit, it had some cool shots in that sequence, but even during the middle of it, we cut to this extremely overlong sequence of Mark Wahlberg and Josh Duhamel running along a space water park, because why focus on the dueling robots when you can see two middle-aged men try to avoid drowning? The final battle is cut to pieces with several extraneous cutaways, and we're completely robbed of any sort of final confrontation between Megatron and Optimus. He defeats Megatron with one step-in sidekick. Why the build-up? Why revive Megatron again just to literally kick him out of the movie? It was fun to see Anthony Hopkins in a Transformers movie, but it wasn't fun to see him dump mountains of expositional dialogue on us that directly contradicted events in the previous movies. But that's material for another video. What made it doubly worse is that this was basically all a con, a backdoor pilot if you will, to expand the Transformers universe, to start a so-called cinematic universe of their own. And we all know what happens when you force-feed universes. They fail. They utterly and completely fail. Amazing Spider-Man 2 would stop its own story to sell you on movies that would ultimately never get made. Universal has tried twice now to jumpstart a monster universe with Dracula and the Mummy. Both attempts resulted in failure. DC's supposed cinematic universe was set to begin with Green Lantern, not Man of Steel. And with Solo underperforming so drastically at the box office, a case can even be made that even the Star Wars spin-off films are in jeopardy. In all of these cases, so much attention is being placed on expanding the universe instead of just setting out to tell the story you came to tell. Returning to Transformers, the movie suffers for it. Anthony Hopkins basically outlined all the Transformers movies they hope to make one day. Throughout this incredibly bloated sequence of events, Mark Wahlberg, out of nowhere, turns out to be the Last Knight. Not even Optimus Prime had the honor of being that. Excalibur forms and the sword is never mentioned again. And the biggest and most heinous crime in the film is the very first thing I mentioned when I started this video. Audiences primarily went to see these films to see these Transformers in action. Whether that be transforming, punching, shooting, it doesn't matter. As long as they look cool and are in battle for prolonged periods of time, people would pay up. And does this film deliver on that incredibly simple premise? No, not in the slightest. They have pretty interesting scenarios like Megatron putting a team together Suicide Squad style, or even Optimus fighting multiple guards at the same time, but they never make good on any of their scenarios. That Megatron scenario is over in less than a minute, with a couple blasts and a retreat, and Optimus just decapitates his enemies with his OP sword. Even the much hyped Bumblebee vs. Optimus scene is over in a few seconds as well. The action scenes were so incredibly underwhelming that I didn't even bother buying the Blu-ray, a huge first for me since I usually scoop that up the moment it's available. As one can tell by the other videos on my channel, I'm a big Transformers fan, and I really enjoyed the first two installments and thought the third one was pretty damn good. But as soon as the fourth one started to show signs of the franchise going downhill, I was really disheartened, but gave the fifth a chance in theaters, in IMAX 3D no less, but still left so disappointed. So if a huge fan like me, who is willing to let mediocre acting and plotting slide just as long as I get to see some Autobots and Decepticons fight, was this severely disappointed, imagine a common moviegoer. They probably thought it was utter trash, and the paying public voted with their wallets. Not even China's box office dollars could save this Transformers installment. So the too long didn't watch version as to why it failed boils down to terrible lead actor, really boring supporting Autobots, forgettable action sequences, forcing the expanded universe, underwhelming robot action scenes, hiding Optimus until the third act, bloated pacing, and plot lines that go nowhere. It really is sad for me to make a video like this as I thoroughly enjoy the franchise, but it needed to be done, and hopefully they will learn from their mistakes in the next Transformers films. What did you think of Transformers: The Last Knight? Which is your favorite Transformers movie? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.